Welcome to our TV network, your ultimate destination for all things exciting and essential. From mouth-watering food to the latest in fashion, health, education, music, movies, and news, plus thrilling sports and breathtaking travel, our TV network brings it all to you. Tune in today and experience the best of every world, all in one place, RTV.network.
Hello, and welcome to Connect Caribe Report. We're so excited to bring you this new program. It's a 1-hour show here on the Callaloo Alliance Media, our network, which focuses on current events, Caribbean people, Caribbean economy, markets, industries, sectors, local businesses, and much more. I'm Jennifer Hyland, your co-host for this week's episode, and today we embark on a journey to reimagine the Caribbean, where seamless travel, thriving trade, and vibrant businesses and cultural exchanges are just the beginning. Well, through Connect Caribe, we are bridging the islands, uniting communities, and unlocking new possibilities for the entire region. So stay tuned as we dive into the stories and innovations that are shaping the Caribbean's bright future. This is your front row seat to the next wave of regional transformation, and we are covering here on Connect Caribe Report all that is happening currently. Well, coming up in the first segment, we are talking about Connect Caribe World with co-host Ambassador Dr. Andrew Thomas. Anthony Weeks is going to be joining us. We have our guest, John Cadenden. I hope I haven't done that a disservice to you, John. But we also have Chris Principe, and we'll be right back after this commercial break as we enter the first segment talking about Connect Caribe World with Ambassador Dr. Andrew Thomas, the chairman and CEO of Cleon Group, the parent company of Connect Caribe World. We'll be right back after this commercial break.
Reimagine a world where the Caribbean is seamlessly connected, where our people, our cultures, and our economies move freely across the islands. This is Connect Caribe, more than a ferry service. It's the heartbeat of a new era, an era where economic opportunities expand, where trade flows freely across our seas, and cultural exchange flourishes. We are linking businesses, empowering communities, and reigniting the hope for a truly integrated Caribbean. Together, we're shaping a brighter, more unified future for the Caribbean. Connect Caribe, connecting our islands, our people, our future.
Welcome back to
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Fed Chair Jay Powell says more interest rate cuts are in the pipeline, though their size and speed will depend on the evolution of the data. Powell also said the economy and hiring are largely healthy. Today, we'll be hearing from the Institute for Supply Management on activity in the manufacturing sector. Economists are expecting activity in September was still in contraction. The FTC is addressing antitrust concerns related to Chevron's acquisition of rival oil producer Hess. By a vote of 3-2, the commission has approved a consent order prohibiting Chevron from appointing Hess CEO John Hess from serving on its board or providing consulting services. The FTC's complaint alleges that Mr. Hess communicated publicly and privately with OPEC's secretaries general, as well as an official from Saudi Arabia. I'm Nancy Lyons, Bloomberg Radio.
Welcome back. Welcome back to Connect Caribbean Reports. And we're in our first segment. And joining me is Ambassador Dr. Andre Thomas. He's the chairman and CEO of Cleon Group Inc., parent company for Connect Caribbean. And we have John Clendenin with us from the IC Group. And we have Chris Principe as well joining us. And we want to talk about everything to do with Connect Caribbean world. And we've been hearing quite a bit about Connect Caribbean, the ferry service. You launched back in January, Dr. Thomas, the news conference, and then in May you give the Caribbean an update. So we're interested to hear what's happening in Connect Caribbean world. What's the primary vision behind Connect Caribbean, and what was the impetus that led to the inception, and how do you see it impacting regional connectivity?
Thank you so much, Jennifer. And the reasons that really gave birth to Connect Caribbean was my group did a comprehensive study on economic development projects that would have the potential of increasing GDP across the board. And our studies were very, very clear that in this case, there was a silver bullet. And the silver bullet was the connecting of the Caribbean for regional trade, regional travel, and for e-commerce through a supply chain logistics maritime corridor. And our studies indicated, and we read many other studies as well, some even from the Department of Commerce, that indicated that if you could connect the Caribbean by a maritime logistics corridor that was efficient, you would see within 5 years increase of GDP from 5 to 7%. And when we saw that, we knew that if we wanted to make impact in the lives of Caribbean people, this was the one project that we had to execute. And that's why we're doing it.
That's great to hear. So what about the milestones that have been achieved since the launch of Connect Caribbean Company? And what's next on the agenda?
Okay, the core milestones are that number one, we were able to create a very strong consortium company. Now, this consortium company is made up of major players in the maritime logistics space within the Caribbean. So we were able to bring in Windward Ferries into the consortium, and they operated a very successful regional ferry service. And then we're able to bring in Rams Logistics, who have the largest cargo moving company in the region with over 1,000 staff. We're also able to acquire and partner with a e-commerce company that will provide e-commerce across the region wherever our ships go. And then we were also able to enter into partnership with SETI case, and that's and the principles of the St. Croix shipyard project and port development project in making the U.S. Virgin Islands St. Croix one of the hubs. So this consortium has been a key milestone. Now we also have held stakeholder engagement sessions. We held one in Barbados almost 2 months ago, and that was very, very successful because executing this type of project requires partnerships across the public sector and the private sector and a synergistic approach. So those relationships have been formed. Just today, we had a major conversation to do with synergizing our efforts with the public sector across the region to ensure that this service works seamlessly for the benefit of the Caribbean people. We have also identified the boats. Right now, we're at the last stage. And the last stage is that we're finalizing the financing. And we expect to do that very, very soon. And believe that in very short order, we will adapt that the boats been acquired or have been acquired. So that's where we are.
Wonderful. That's great to hear of the anticipation. We're definitely looking forward, Ambassador Thomas, for the implementation of Connect Caribbean Ferry. But you mentioned three divisions: travel, e-commerce, cargo, and definitely the agri component. But if you can just dive a little bit deeper there, and how do you see the ferry service addressing the current challenges in the Caribbean transportation? And then we want to talk about the broader regional plans for economic integration. And I want to bring in Anthony and John here to talk about the synergies between the Caribbean American single economy, US Virgin Islands. So if you can just lead with that answer, Dr. Thomas, and I'll bring in John and Anthony and see what synergies there are. So it's how do you see the ferry service addressing the current challenges, both the e-commerce division, the cargo division, and certainly travel, and then how does it fit into the broader regional plans for economic integration?
Okay, thank you for that question. I'll start with cargo. The region, there are many products that we actually import into the region that the region has the capacity to produce. Example, Trinidad is a manufacturing center. But we have a tremendous problem in the fact that the maritime logistics corridor is not there to directly ship these products on a regular basis that is dependable. So the creation of this is going to increase manufacturing capacity, is going to deliver cheaper goods made in the region that would be served by regional manufacturers to countries all around the region. Also, agri-cargo as well uh, will also be served by this cargo division, and the imports would significantly reduce, which affects our foreign exchange reserves as well. I mean, so that's very important. I mean, we spent over, 13 billion US dollars last year importing agro goods. Now, the other area is in the travel. We will be able, with the ferry service, to move very large amounts of people in one go at a very affordable rate. And I believe this is going to enhance regional travel, cultural exchange, festivals, sports events would significantly be affected by this. And people experiencing the region, it becomes more accessible and affordable to people. E-commerce is major because what we're doing, we're creating a larger market for our small businesses, medium sized, and even large companies. If you are in Barbados, your market is not more than 300,000 people. If you have goods that can be traded via e-commerce, there's no way you can get them through to Trinidad. You don't have the corridor. But with our service, you can create goods in Barbados and get them to Trinidad within 24 hours. And so we will provide that service. And our intention is that once we start within 2 years, we'll create a market of over 80 million people that your goods can get to within 3 to 4 days of that. So that's the vision.
Wonderful. Well, you just mentioned about an 18 million market, but with the case and USVI vision, I want to bring John in here and get his perspective on what Ambassador Dr. Andre just stated, and how do you see and envision a result of increased connectivity with the case on board and U.S. Virgin Islands? What's your perspective, John?
Yeah, I think the what the ambassador is talking about in as we look at the Caribbean single economy in the Americas with CASE and looking at the finance, we look at trade, commerce, and as Mr. Weeks, who's the architect of this plan and strategy, we've been looking for several years now. Anthony and I have been working together as my company, IC Group, as a partner in looking at what is this role of global trade facilitation that we can actually exploit effectively among the Caribbean countries. So we're looking for increased entrepreneurship, job creation, regional integration and trade, the access to technology and innovation, and strengthen resilience to the economic challenges. So in the Caribbean, the large reliance on tourism and where we compete individually as opposed to collectively, although it's $1 billion, international market, we want to facilitate things that are, I think, critical to our economy. So we're talking about resilience to national or international disaster recovery. So the same things that the ambassador was talking about in regards to trade and the economy and the development in a stable environment, when we have a natural disaster of hurricanes or volcanoes erupting, we need to be able to support that. So FEMA, for example, has a 3 phases, the relief phase, recovery, and then resilience. And we're trying to move to that resilience phase. It says, how can we build a better future together without relying on those outside forces? Over.
That's great. I want to get Anthony's perspective. In segment 2, we're going to be talking about connecting the dots and giving you some background on the Caribbean American single economy. But just to get your perspective here, Anthony, on what Ambassador Dr. Thomas said and John's perspective. What is your vision and hope behind that?
I have coined a phrase, and I would say I'm going to give it a timeline of 35, 40 years. Missed opportunity, lost economy. Again, let me repeat that. Missed opportunity, lost economy. That is what I describe has been the case between the United States Virgin Islands being part of the Caribbean, but being extended to the United States, where we have not been active in the engagement and collaboration to build, if you will, the mission that we have embarked on is to reimagine, rediscover, and redraw the map for a new economic paradigm. And the reason we are saying this is because the U.S. is the largest trade partner for the Caribbean. But yet, when you look at the role of the U.S. Virgin Islands and what role we play, and being proactively and being at the table involved with CARICOM and other associate states, that we now have an opportunity by the creation of the Caribbean America single economy to work in tandem, to work in concert with what CARICOM commissioned back in 1989 was the Caribbean single market and economy. So we felt it was necessary to create a parallel effort and a vehicle to work alongside our neighbor in CARICOM to have a better, closer, stronger integration of relationship, building bridges between our economies and our community. And so this is what we've been doing. To be able to now say, what role do we play as being both the United States, but yet uniquely Caribbean in the region?
Okay, great. Well, we want to on to segment 2 because I want you to expand and give listeners and viewers, certainly those who are hearing about CASE for the first time, what's the vision and the impetus for that, and certainly from as the architect for CASE, if you can give us a broader overview of the Caribbean American civil economy. And Dr. Thomas would have mentioned earlier last year or 2 years ago, we had Congressman Mark Green talking about nearshoring. I mean, there's so many implications for the two entities coming together, but I want us to go to a commercial break, and when we come back, Anthony, I want you to give us a broader view of the Caribbean American single economy. Here in the Caribbean, we've been hearing about Caribbean single market economy and connecting the Caribbean. We certainly have been schooled in the Caribbean single market economy, but we want to know a lot more about CASE for those listeners here in the Caribbean who want to know about the vision behind CASE. So we're going to go to a commercial break, and when we come back, we want to bring in Chris Principe. He has worked in international banking as a consultant, a banker and trainer in financial solutions. So we can probably get his vision and his input
and a very vital partner for the CASE initiative in terms of Europe and Asia, in terms of finance and technology as well. So looking forward to hearing from Chris as well.
Yeah, so when we come back, we have the three, Chris Principe, John McDenon, and Anthony Weeks, and turn it over to Ambassador Thomas, and we're going to discuss CASE and connecting the dots between Caribbean single market economy and the CASE vision Caribbean American single economy. We'll be right back after this commercial break.
With a Bloomberg Small Business Report, I'm Tracy Jonke. You have an eye on a prospective client or networking contact, but they are not responding to your emails or messages on LinkedIn. Here's a tip. Invite them to join you as a guest on your podcast. Some enterprising entrepreneurs have turned to podcasting to build their brands, much like big companies such as Netflix and Shopify have done. And some have discovered it's also an effective way to introduce themselves to an otherwise impossible to reach prospect, or to land new customers without even making a pitch. Jeff Umbro, the founder of podcast marketing firm Podglomerate, made this discovery while working as a book publicist. He tells Bloomberg that a writer who was a guest on his show asked to become a client. It wasn't something Umbro planned for when he created his podcast, but he says it was an added bonus. And that's the Bloomberg Small Business Report.
Hello everybody, welcome back for another Healthy Minute. If you want to boost your brain health, make sure you eat more foods that are packed with omega-3 fatty acids, foods such as salmon and sardines. And if you want to increase your protein content, which is also excellent for your body, add some codfish. Fresh codfish in fact, is low in mercury, high in protein, and has a great number of vitamins and minerals. For this Healthy Minute, I'm Dr. Hafizullah. See you again soon. Thank you for watching. Please remember to click subscribe for the latest videos and
Well, we're back with Connect Caribbean Report, and we are talking about connecting the dots. We want to know more about the case, the impetus for case, what started the case. We want to know the backstory. We here in the Caribbean, we know a lot about the Caribbean single market economy. So I want to know from Anthony, what was the vision and the impetus? And if you can have a discussion about what you see this being and the implications they have for connectivity, both with what CARICOM is looking to do within the region, and certainly from the US side, the US Virgin Islands, and the Caribbean American single economy. Then we're going to come back and put a spotlight on the current issue, but I'll turn it over to Anthony Weeks as we talk about Caribbean American single economy. Over to you, Anthony.
I think fundamental and primarily what I think really how and why it was necessary to envision a closer, more united region is because you look at the issue of capital, the issue of inefficiency, and the perception of the region is just known for white sandy beach, turquoise water, blue skies, and palm trees. That is the perception people have of us. And so earlier, previously I said, missed opportunity, lost economy because of that perception of the region. So we now have a unique opportunity to change the trajectory and the perception of the rest of the region. 14 million Americans travel from the US to the Caribbean on an annual basis, according to the State Department. So there's a whole ecosystem that we are ignoring that offers tremendous opportunities for us to be able to address the fragmentation of the island chains, which create the fractionness of the region, to be able to improve how we move people and cargo in the region and create more and stimulate more investment in the region. And so for me, it was first the issue of capital and the challenges and lack of access to capital, and then the movement and goods coming between the United States and the Caribbean. And so for me, I felt it was necessary to address this problem because it was such an obvious issue for the region. And so we said, what role can the U.S. Virgin Islands play, understanding that we are part of whatever multilateral, bilateral trade deals that the United States make with its foreign partners, and understand how we can sit at the table and alongside with our colleagues and neighbors to say, how can we help shape the agenda and lead this new paradigm for a new ecosystem and the building of a new economic bloc to strengthen relationship between the United States, Latin America, Caribbean, and the rest of the world. And I have my two colleagues, both John Clendenin and Chris Principe, who respectively, who bring their respective unique perspective, talent, and attributes to this conversation. Because John is the chairman CEO of IC Logistics, building a major transportation supply chain project upstate New York in Newburgh, New York. Then you have Chris Principe, former banker, publisher, and he is if you will, a vanguard in the area of financial and technology and how to connect the dots in terms of finance. So I would like to be able to have an opportunity, Jennifer, to have my colleagues chime in on that as well.
Sure, go ahead. Let's hear from John Clendenin and then Chris Principe, your perspective on the case.
Yeah, I think one. I think I would start by putting it in the context of what we're talking about. So the context of the current environment is with high debt levels, the dependence on tourism that Anthony mentioned, our vulnerability to natural disasters that I talked about previously, and the limited economic diversification. And so by relying on each other, both internally and externally, our history is with some of the exploitation and the different things of the colonialism, is that each of these Caribbean nations have ties also specifically to global trade with their former, the former colonies. So when we look at that whole opportunity and look at saying with trade, we're looking at what are the infrastructure things and what's our competitive advantage. Anthony mentioned the supply chain center of regional excellence that we're doing in Newburgh, New York, by combining the Deepwater Seaport and Beacon, an 11,000-foot runway at the former Stewart Air Force Base. A Conrail runs up the west side of the Hudson River. And then we have, within 51 miles, the opportunity for electric vehicles and trucks and lorries to go into the city. So that was developed out of the COVID crisis when we were looking at how do you support billions of masks and the rubber gloves that went into the support for COVID, and where would that happen? And the logical place that I recommended was to do it at Stewart. But then linking Stewart to the rest of the world. We know the current destabilization in the Middle East, and right now the C-117s and C-130s that support the Middle East that go to Qatar come out of Stewart Air Force Base. So if we could use that capability and tie to St. Croix as a hub, St. Croix also has a large runway that we could support with trade. We also have the Jones Act. We have different things with the Deepwater Seaport that we have in our Renaissance Park area. So we have the capability of building the infrastructure to support the region. And then we have the trade that can come in with food insecurity and global trade and technology to bring in goods from the largest trading partner of the United States directly to St. Croix and then be distributed, as the ambassador talked about, with ferry services that take cargo and people and actually make that whole environment efficient. So that's what we're looking at, is saying, how do we bring the Caribbean as a partner, both internally with the other Caribbean nations, and figure out some of the things that we've been limited by, because the United States has not been a member of CARICOM. And there's different kinds of affiliations and observer roles that we could have, but we could strengthen that and have, like CARICOM has with the visa program, the Virgin Islands is really the third border of the United States. And so we're a separate customs jurisdiction and we have certain advantages. And I think that if we take together and working together, I think is where we have the competitive advantage of what we're seeking to achieve.
Great, and yeah, thank you so much, John. As you were speaking, I was thinking about in terms of where CARICOM is in the ease of doing business. You know, we're kind of down the leaderboard in terms of the ease of doing business. Do you foresee, or what challenges do you foresee, before we bring Chris in, what challenges do you foresee in making this broad vision, this great vision happen between US and certainly CARICOM? Because, you know, CARICOM are individual states with their individual policies and so forth. So what's your viewpoint there?
I think we have the strategies that we need to put in place. We need to diversify the private sector and figure out how does that happen. Building the financial, that I'm sure Chris will talk about, the financial resilience, investing in human capital and education. So if we have, for example, the ability to have regional educational conferences and take advantage of the universities by having an educational visa where people from CARICOM or the Caribbean can all come to the Virgin Islands for educational purposes. Environmental and natural resources, the physical infrastructure resilience of how we look at sort of the innovation that's happening in Barbados with electric vehicles and the grid, and taking advantage of how years ago with the Caribbean Basin Initiative, we had looked at, can we link the Caribbean together for energy and telecommunications? So the Virgin Islands has 8 times the fiber capacity of Silicon Valley, but we're not using it to the advantage of the Caribbean. So we need to connect with fiber. We need to connect with energy. Over.
Wonderful, John. And I want to bring Chris in here and get his perspective as a banker in terms of the ease of doing business and in terms of trade and payments and so forth. If you have your ear on the ground with the Caribbean, some of us, Barbados, we are looking to upscale in terms of our level of readiness for digital payments and so forth. Based on what John just said, could you give us your view on the readiness and what does the Caribbean need to do broad-based? Because obviously you have Barbados, we're doing our part here in Barbados, you're in Jamaica and Trinidad and those other islands. But what do we have to do collectively to be ready for such an opportunity as this?
Jennifer, thank you very much. And I'll dovetail a little bit on what John spoke about, as well as some of the statements by Ambassador Thomas. So, the region uh, economically is a tourism based economy. And certainly the number of Americans and the close proximity contributes to a lot of that, as well as from the European community and Latin America and some of the others. So that is the driving force economically in a lot of ways. But it's the benefit of it is great, but some of the drawbacks. So first, you have, I think, many people in their minds look at the Caribbean as individual islands rather than even countries. So this prevents some of the acknowledgement of what we need to accomplish and get done on the financial side. So if we talk about the financial side, what makes it difficult is that it's a number of countries with smallish economies, and as a block, it could be much more substantial. So where the challenges are, we have a challenge in banking that's been going on for the last decade, and it goes by the term of de-risking. So many banks have pulled out of the area and the region because each individual place are small economies, and the banks look at them by risk. Because basically, banks are not about money in the world, they're about managing risk. So when they look at a lot of the communities in terms of the countries here, they're looking at the risk. And I will tell you what the mentality is of the bankers. It really comes down to one simple statement, which is one bad transaction. And what I mean by that is, for instance, if you're a U.S. bank and you're doing business on the ground in Barbados, a country on its own, a small population and community, if the bank gets one bad transaction that slips through and ends up getting fined from the Federal Reserve Bank of the United States, that fine might be bigger than the profit that the bank has made in the last 10 years, and likely the profit they would make in the next 10 years. So to avoid that, they pull out. This creates a more difficult situation in the region in general, because now you lose access to banking, access to the internet versions of it being as broad as you can. You lose choice, and more important, you lose the influx of capital. And one of the things that I strongly believe in this market is that we need more ways of being able to generate capital so that we can grow the economy, so that we can invest in businesses, so that we can do the logistics and transportation infrastructure that's so needed. With the program of Ambassador Thomas, this really covers one of the areas. Like, how do you move goods through the area? And we know traditionally it's been by air. It's expensive and it's limited in size of the physical goods that you can bring back and forth. So a ferry service, being able to use the sea to our advantage is a must. And along with that, the documentation and financial instruments that are necessary to do this. The challenge on the financial side also covers different currencies. So you need to be able to go in and out of different currencies because the region is a block, not a unified block. In some ways, what's happening in the European Union could be a model in terms of being able to bring everybody together at the same table with common interests, common goals, and to build things together. And I think that really benefited European Union in the beginning when things were really moving to localization. We've seen the same here in the Caribbean, where people are looking and companies are looking to be more localized. What's happened recently, though, it's become much more of a protectionism move now. And we've seen a lot of that in the Caribbean. So I would put forward the idea that here we need to do re-globalization.
Okay, Chris, I'm having a little, I get the gist of what you're saying. I know you need to check your mic so that we can hear you clearly, but I've heard what you said, and one of the things that stood out to me, definitely the political will to come together to make, what you said a reality, and because they're individual islands with individual financial policies and restrictions and so forth. But we certainly understand what you're saying, but I would want you to repeat some of what you said when you come back from break, because we want to talk about the current issue that's happening right now. And as John, who is an expert there in terms of the supply chain and so forth and what's happening, because the gains that we've made, these gains that we've made certainly can be eroded in a short space of time. So I want, in terms of what you said, key points that we made, and have John's perspective, and bring Dr. Thomas in here, and we want to talk about in the spotlight, coming up in the next segment, in the spotlight, what's happening right now in Maine and Texas with the port workers, the dock workers striking. How is that going to affect the Caribbean? We are very volatile. We import 90% of our goods, and certainly food and security. So I really want to talk about that when we come back and shed the spotlight on what's happening right now in terms of trade and shipment with regards to what's happening in Maine and Texas on the border. So as we come back from a commercial break, we're going to have a perspective of Dr. Thomas here in Barbados and the region, Chris Principe, and John can then on their perspective of what's happening right now in the U.S. with the dock workers strike. So we'll be right back after this commercial.
This is the Bloomberg Real Estate Report. I'm Denise Pellegrini. They're back. Redfin says buyers are jumping back into the market again as mortgage rates come down and the Fed cuts interest rates.
For a long time, we were waiting for home buyers to react to falling rates, and finally, we are seeing strong signs that they had gotten the message. Rates are now lower.
Daryl Fairweather, chief economist at Redfin, says not only is demand for mortgage rate locks jumping, it's seeing a pickup in home tours and other related activities since the Fed cut rates, almost like it's a spring market again.
People are back to the same level of demand they had in May.
And Fairweather says nationwide, the drop in mortgage rates from the spring peak is saving the typical buyer hundreds of dollars a month in home payments, and the savings are even bigger in more expensive markets like Los Angeles, where monthly home payments are down $670 a month. And Anaheim, where the drop in mortgage rates has resulted in an $840 a month decrease in the price of typical mortgage payment. And that's the Bloomberg Real Estate Report. I'm
Metro New York's port services are currently constrained and challenged in facilitating the handling of international cargo. It's time for a whole new ballgame. Just 55 miles north of the city, Stewart Airport, closed during the base realignment, is an underutilized resource that could be maximized and bring growth to the area and relieve New York City. It's an ideal place for a thriving supply chain center of regional excellence, called SCORE. We intend to support the New York and New Jersey Port Authority's commitment to the New York International Plaza, putting it at the forefront of a transformation of regional global trade, telecommunications, and economic growth. A logistics-based regenerative smart city that supplies an interactive platform of data and document interoperability to optimize resources. SCORE will transform this location into a thriving hub that can process and distribute cargo via various methods of transportation, elevating it to one of the world's best intermodal ports. We aim to build a cybersecure network operations center that enables customers to share data in real time across the supply chain and across the whole region, utilizing eco-friendly practices to keep things running efficiently. And it doesn't stop there. Not only will SCORE develop high-speed wireless networks in a data-driven city to improve logistics and facilitate international trade, it will also create critical infrastructure for regional economic development. By optimizing the business environment, attracting startups and investment, supporting the development of high-value industries such as medical, education, technology, and hospitality, creating new employment opportunities for the region. SCORE will inject vibrancy and inspire prosperity in an underutilized area to develop a greener and more livable smart city that thrives, bringing excellence to the Hudson Valley. It's a game.
Reimagine a world where the Caribbean is seamlessly connected, where our people, our cultures, and our economies move freely across the islands. This is Connect Caribbean. More than a ferry service, it's the heartbeat of a new era, an era where economic opportunities expand, where trade flows freely across our seas, and cultural exchange flourishes. We are linking businesses, empowering communities, and reigniting the hope for a truly integrated Caribbean. Together, we're shaping a brighter, more unified future for the Caribbean. Connect Caribbean, connecting our islands, our people, our future.
Welcome back to Connect Caribbean Report and your segment in the spotlight. And we certainly want to put an issue on the spotlight. But before I do, we have just here in the Caribbean, certainly, I'm sure that there's some who are still recovering from the COVID pandemic and the gains that we have made coming out of the COVID pandemic issue. Now we have something brewing in terms of the dock workers strike from Maine to Texas, and that's going to certainly threaten the supply chain, and the Caribbean is already vulnerable. And so, there are some issues that are going to come up in terms of disruption, price increases, definitely nutrition and health impacts, economic consequences, regional variations. And so we want to talk about what we can do to mitigate these effects in terms of regional policy and what we can consider and what we can do. But John, as an expert in supply chain management, what's your view and what do you foresee happening if we don't, we should have been putting some things in place already to mitigate certain issues, certainly coming out of COVID. There are lots of lessons to be learned from COVID. But what is your view in terms of what is likely to happen if this is not resolved in short order?
I think the important thing for me is that we're getting together now to address some of these issues. I talked earlier about the disaster recovery and what happens with FEMA in their relief, recovery, and resilience phases, and how each of us are dealing with those disasters. And right now in the United States, they're also looking at this latest Hurricane Helena disaster. But specifically, when we look at the issues, and why I'm excited about being part of this show, is that there are current things that impact us as a region that we're not really prepared unifiedly to respond to. and that would be current port strike that's going on. Now, this strike is affecting 36 ports in the eastern coast of the United States and the Gulf Coast. And it's 45,000 port workers with the International Longshoremen's Association who are looking for better pay, and they're also looking to have less automation. The U.S. Maritime Alliance has proposed $2.50 as far as the hourly wage increase, and the ILA is looking for $5 an hour for the next per year for the next 6 years. So this has an impact, and President Biden has talked about offering or trying to mitigate this and saying $4. But the issue is that it's going to disrupt our supply chain. And it's the cargo through those critical ports. We rely on food in the Caribbean, even though we have some companies, the variations like Guyana and Belize are more self-sufficient, but we don't have a good way of distributing the food among ourselves and to be able to take care of that. Now, some of the local shippers like Crowley is not a member of the Maritime Alliance, and they are going to be able to continue in that operation. But the things that the ambassador is talking about, if we have a regional ferry service, if we have regional logistics for air, and we can connect to this supply chain center of regional excellence in the United States with air, we can bypass those kinds of things. So it's an exciting thing when we connect the dots and look at regional or current areas of impact, such as the dock strikes that we can address on this show. Over.
Yeah, thank you, John. I want to bring Ambassador Dr. Audrey Thomas in on that. When you envision this maritime transportation, I'm sure you foresee issues like this happening. What is your hope for the Caribbean to be able to be self-sufficient and mitigate issues, and the role of Connect Caribbean Ferry Service being the link between the two to make sure that we are able to, as I said, mitigate issues like this coming on stream?
It's my perspective that even though as a world, as a race, we have definitely increased when it comes to technology, but we have major uh, societal um, brewing earthquakes, like what's happening in the US right now. There's geopolitical conflict within the Middle East, and all of those issues have a significant impact on supply chain to the Caribbean. So just looking ahead and just really doing forecasting based on the current issues that are, it's like a volcano that you expect to erupt. If as a region we don't seize this particular window in time and build capacity and resilience in our supply chain, then we will really become a victim of conflicts, and whether it's employer-employee conflicts, whether it's geopolitical conflicts, whether it's disasters in other parts of the world, we will become very, very vulnerable. The key thing is that we don't have to be that vulnerable, because when most of the people that came to the Caribbean came, they came to create an agro-economy. So we have the foundation and history of being able to produce. And so the capacity is there, the history is there, and the ability is there. We now just need to do it in this window of time and create the logistics supply chain to do it. And I'm very happy for the partners that are gathered here, because I believe as a team we can get this done.
Okay, with 2 minutes to go in this segment, definitely would love to hear, Chris, what is your perspective from a financial, certainly IT, and the big picture, as your background says? What do you foresee in terms of the Caribbean mitigating issues like this from a financial perspective? You can turn your mic on. Yeah.
I think both Ambassador Thomas and John Clendenin have outlined very well the physical supply chain. And what we need to keep in mind is that there is a parallel financial supply chain. You really need both and need both to work well. And the region has such a wealth of population, manpower, that has education, innovation. They have drive and passion to really go into the technology space. And I think the building of that technology infrastructure is going to be really critical for the future and be able to compete with other areas in the regions, as well as enhance the financial aspects that are necessary to go along with the supply chain.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris. Well, we're going to be back after this commercial break with a wrap up of Connect Caribe report and just getting everyone's view on what we can do moving forward and what we're looking to achieve with Connect Caribe World, Connect Caribbean Case, Caribbean Single Market Economy. So we'll be right back after this commercial break with our guests.
This is the Bloomberg Green Report. The green energy transition is expected to create millions of new jobs in the U.S., and supporters say it will lift many Americans into the middle class. But an early pilot program raises questions about how much low-skilled workers will share in the expected boom. Vocational schools and workforce development organizations have offered programs said to provide a fast track to jobs. But clean tech jobs are not abundant in some parts of the country, and some employers won't hire people who are fresh out of the programs. They want experience. Accenture and Goodwill Industries teamed up to launch a pilot green jobs accelerator in 4 major U.S. cities in early 2024. It trains people to repair EV charging stations and install solar panels and heat pumps. Participants were told they could expect salaries of around $62,000. But several months after the pilot began, more than 60% of participants have yet to find the jobs they were trained to do. Jeff Bellinger.
Today we're taking a little vacation on the west end of St. Croix, visiting a seaside restaurant called the Beachside Cafe here at Sandcastles on the Beach.
The atmosphere is just wonderful.
You just feel very welcome when you're here.
Hi! I'd like to introduce Chris and Ted, who are the owners of Beachside Cafe and also Sandcastles on the Beach. This is amazing!
Thank you. Sandcastle on the Beach is quiet and friendly, relaxing.
I often entertain guests, and this is the one place I always try to bring people.
Tell us a little bit about the hotel.
Well, the hotel is a 25-room hotel. We have 10 different room types within that. We also have, of course, our greatest asset, the ocean out there, which our side of the island is very calm typically. So it's the best swimming beach and also great for snorkeling.
And just walking, doing a nice walking beach tour.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Best beach access is right here, so we love them.
And we're also fortunate we have just up the way Sandy Point National Park, and then Frederickstead Town is just a mile away. Mm-hmm. And so we're really fortunate to be in this perfect spot.
For the Bloomberg Business of Sports Report, I'm Michael Barr. English cricket team Hampshire is set to become the first to be owned by an overseas franchise after entering into a phased acquisition with the part owner of Indian Premier League team Delhi Capitals. The deal was described by Hampshire, a county in the south of England, as the start of a significant strategic partnership with GMR Global that will see the Indian conglomerate initially buy a majority stake before likely taking 100% ownership within the next 24 months. Did you hear what Chicago Cubs left fielder Ian Happ did on the team's final game of the season? To show his appreciation for the Cubs faithful, Happ chucked a ball wrapped in $100 bills to the left stands at Wrigley Field on Sunday. Happ's message written on the ball read, "Thanks for the support all season. Beers for the left field crew on me." With the Bloomberg Business of Sports Report, I'm Michael Barr.
Welcome back to Connect Caribbean Report. And we're talking all about Caribbean, Connect Caribbean, private service, CASE, Caribbean American Single Economy. And with the next 4 minutes to wrap up the program, I just want to get the viewpoints of Chris and John. And certainly would like Anthony to tune in and give us each in 1 minute your perspective. And this certainly is a framework, and we have a really great platform on which to build. And if you can just give us what your vision is in a brief 1 minute contribution, and certainly we come back next Wednesday and talk more about Connect Caribbean World and where we are and all the great things that are happening between the U.S. Virgin Islands and Connect Caribbean Ferry Service. So over to you, John. What's your perspective? What's your vision? What are you hoping for?
Well, I'd like to end by saying that what we do here on the show is important, and what we do will certainly make a difference. And I look forward to our next shows weekly on Wednesdays. I think the issue for me that we need to think about is that we need to focus in the Caribbean on our blue water kinds of inclusive economic region. We need to focus on resilient recovery measures. We have to strengthen social protections. We have to reactivate the economic activity. We have to facilitate that SETI CASE does, small businesses adapting to climate change, financial protection from disasters, improved debt management, and improved macro fiscal sustainability. So there are very important things that we can do, and I think we have a great team here on the show, and I look forward to participating. Thank you.
Chris, give us your perspective, 30 seconds.
Great.
What you're hoping for.
Great. From the financial aspects, I'd like to see some better integration between the rest of the world, as well as better unification internally. Be able to use fintech to be able to bring things together like smoothness of payments, cybersecurity, foreign exchange. Be able to bring all these things along with one of the most important ingredients, which is capital. So whether it's public capital or private capital, capital needs to be attracted here. We need to do those things. We look forward to talking about them in the weeks to come.
Okay, great. Thank you, Chris. And over to you, Ambassador Dr. Thomas. What's your hope? What's your vision moving forward? You can turn your mic on. Thank you.
Information can inspire people to see possibilities. And when they see those possibilities, they can be inspired to act on them. And when they do, you can see change. So my hope and vision is that the information shared in this show would inspire people to see possibilities, and they will have courage to act on those possibilities and see transformation within the region.
Yes, Anthony. Thank you so much, Ambassador Thomas. What's your hope? What's your vision moving forward for this?
For the viewing and listening audience that's eavesdropping in this conversation, this is a weekly program, and we're going to reinforce the objectives and the agenda in terms of how we change the trajectory, change the narrative in terms of how we build a better, stronger, more integrated region. This is going to be a landmark historic event. What we're doing has not been done before. We are literally, those who are watching throughout the Caribbean, throughout the U.S., throughout the world, and listening via radio. In the next couple of weeks, we're going to have the benefit, and we will be welcoming the delegation from the Caribbean, the CARICOM private sector organization, delegation, enterprise, Connect Caribe, here in the U.S. Virgin Islands to meet with Governor Bryan and his cabinet and key private sector members to be able to come and sit at the table, roll up our sleeve, and have the discussion as to the next action item, the next step in terms of how we implement. This is not hyperbole. This is not theoretical. This is not hypothetical. This is real. That this program is going to educate, inform, and enable you as a listener, as a viewer, to be literally a fly on the wall to watch the transformation of this region and where we're going in terms of the future of economic prosperity, the creation of wealth, and the empowerment of the region.
Thank you, Anthony. Thank you, Ambassador Dr. Andre Thomas. Thank you, John Cledenin, and thank you, Chris Prince-Fay. You've been watching Connect Caribbean Report here on the Kalaloo Network. And if you want to hear more and know more about what's happening, just want you to visit ournewschannel.com, where you'll learn more about our guests and their background. And we certainly be back here with guests from across the Caribbean and from the U.S. Virgin Islands and America so that we can inform. So you've been watching Connect Caribbean Report, a world of trade, movement of people, cultural exchange, and we talk about things that matters to the Caribbean and U.S. Virgin Islands. So thank you for joining us. Thank you, viewers and listeners. We'll be back next week, same time, 1:30 here on the Kalaloo Network. Thank you, and bye-bye. You can sign us off.